like to give each of the four of you just a chance to talk about what you think is most important. I mean, I have another question about choosing a tool, but I think it might not be as relevant as just what you think is most important. Either where are we going in the future, what should companies be most aware of, what most needs to be said about DevOps. JP, that's a horribly open-ended question, but I would throw it at you nonetheless.
Well, you know, all right, so for me, this is part of the two other key initiatives that should be going on in the enterprise today. One is IT modernization. I really believe many of these organizations really haven't had the time due to, again, where they spend their hours in their day, where their budget is allocated, and there are statistics that show, you know, where does ops spend their time? Firefighting. They spend 60% of their time just communicating, trying to figure out what's going to be deployed, when it's going to be deployed, what went wrong in a current deployment. So their time is so limited to focus on getting rid of the backlog of work, and then participating in the innovation with the other parts of the business. And that, you know, that's really what we want to achieve is first to get to a point where we've reached some fraction of time available to that initiative, and then using IT's capabilities to help drive the business engine. And so IT modernization is critical in order to enable that. You know, it's and it incurs everything from looking at, you know, what systems are running today, what is the percentage of use, how much overhead do they bring onto the business, what would it take to re-platform them in the cloud. You know, there are still businesses that have no compliance requirements that still run their own email servers. In this day and age, that's a ridiculous use of IT spend. There is just no reason that any company should own their own email service at this day and age. It's just the cost benefit to putting it in the cloud is so, you know, well established that every CEO who doesn't have a compliance requirement should be moving in that direction. Secondarily, it's delivery of IT as a service. Damon hit upon some of these points. It's definitely a big part of what I talk about is using the service as a metaphor for the mission in the enterprise. And DevOps is a feed into the IT as a service initiatives. And IT as a service isn't just a change in IT, but I described it yesterday as, or I used this analogy, it's moving from becoming the slumlord to becoming the concierge. So, you know, we have been delivering functionality to the business for years, but we haven't been delivering services, because services entails a whole lot of other ecosystem that comes with that. How is it being supported? How is it being governed? How is it being advertised to the end users? How is it being, you know, documented? It's a package. And when in part of DevOps is helping to encapsulate and deliver that package, but other parts are also training. It's testing, it's inclusion of the business into the stage and end user acceptance testing, it's understanding the pipeline. What's coming at me? If DevOps, big aspect of this is dev test. Well, that's great. I've convinced the business to give me an environment that looks like production, that we can do dev test on. It's sized X. Now, we can grow it if we see that much coming at us, that we decide as a business it makes sense to grow this so we can do 14 more projects this year. But if you don't tell me it's coming and all of you attack me at once asking for resources, guess what? Ain't going to happen. So then what happens? Oh, people say, well, Amazon's available, Google's available. That's great. But that's a business decision. And I feel like that's where shadow IT comes in and takes that opportunity for the business to make that decision away from them. And that's where we're starting to see, you know, a lot of problems occur. Excessive spending beyond budgetary constraints, no controls, and it was just a matter of lack of communication. That IT as a service initiative, and those two things really are fed, you know, by DevOps. DevOps is one of the feeds that help deliver this.
Lori, IT as a service, the future of DevOps. What do people really most need to know?
Wow. Well, if it's going to be a service, and if it's about automating processes, you really have to look at those processes. I mean, if you automate a bad process, what do you get? You get to fail faster. Yay! I mean, that's not really the goal anybody's supporting. You know, a lot of the efficiencies people associate with just being able to automate it. But if you're automating a process that's I SSH into this server, and then I edit this file, and then I do these things, and it's all automated. Sure, you don't have to manually do it, but you really haven't saved that much time. You're still doing the same thing. You're just letting a computer do it for you. There's a million different things around that whole, thinking that automation is going to save all the time and make things go faster and make your life easier and free you up to innovate. It's true in the sense that it can do that, but only if you actually look at what you're doing. You have to look at the processes that you're automating and figure out, are these the right processes? Have we actually added additional layers of processes that were never necessary because we're so large that we've got this entire structure built out? So we have to have Bob and Mary and Jane look at this before we can put it out. Why did we do that? Well, because we did. Maybe that's inefficient. Get rid of it. Look at those processes, and I think that's probably more of what's going to happen with DevOps, and where it's more important and where real efficiencies are going to be gained, and where business is actually going to gain a lot of competitive advantage through their processes, just like they do on the business side, is by being able to take a look at them again and streamline them like we did with the business and say, wow, we had all this stuff in here that wasn't necessary. Get rid of it, and let's just focus on what we're supposed to be doing, going back to the goals, delivering this service and this application to the end user.
As Lori and I both live on Lake Michigan, the analogy she'll enjoy is you can automate driving the car into Lake Michigan.
Yes.
Well, I guess the moral of the story is you can't take humans out of automation, then where are we with automation? So I guess automation needs to be monitored and supervised. Damon, the future of DevOps, where are we going? What matters most?
Wow, that's a big loaded question.
It is, or what's most important?
42. It's good.
That's a good number.
Wasn't that the meaning of life? Whatever. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Something. Anyways, I think first of all, we have to fundamentally realize this is not a technology problem. This is a business problem. And if a business admits that there is no differentiation between the business and the technology that it runs on today, that you have to say that any business that cannot continue to compete, cannot continue to improve on time to market and quality, is going to lose. So I think it's fundamentally, this is not a technology problem. In any organization you go into that says, hey, we have time to market and quality problems, and the CIO or the CEO shakes your hand, says, great, go talk to those guys 5 floors down. They're team XYZ, and I always knew they were screwed up. Go help them sort their problems out. That company is going to lose, and I think that needs to be communicated more clearly and more firmly. That all the things we're seeing, like on the lean startup side and the big switch and good to great and all these kind of big. All these the business school thinking that's been driving, that's really been driving the business side of the world. This is the same thing. We just talk about it through technology flavors, and I think that needs to be fundamentally understood. So if you accept that if you don't continue to improve and you can't compete on time to market and quality, that you're going to lose as a business, then we can start talking, right? And then you, I think, have to kind of use sort of that, the kind of, to use the old gold rat expression, if you make an improvement anywhere other than the constraint for your system, it's just an illusion, right? So we can, shuffle around and we can talk about our new, our new automation tools, or we can say we're doing this software development lifecycle or that, but we fundamentally don't restructure how we've drawn our organization, how we've aligned our people, how we incentivize them to work. JP, talked before about the qualities that you need to extend to IT. I think the guys at Netflix have this great thing about freedom and responsibility. That how do you empower teams to get done what needs to get done, yet also put the responsibility on them to make sure it gets done, right? And often we see it in kind of traditional corporate structures. That's completely lacking. We give them accountability, means we yell at them something goes wrong, but we don't give them the freedom and the responsibility and the empowerment to actually go do something about it, right? So there's all these broken things that happen that for whether they were good or bad decisions in the past, I'm not really here to judge that. But for today, the management thinking and the organizational principles and the guiding instructions that we programmed our organization with are wrong, and I think that needs to be fundamentally addressed. And we're seeing it start with kind of the smaller webby startups, because for them, they had to compete on that, and now we're seeing this infiltrate into the big banks. Because what's a bank? It's smart people and computers, right? So they're not talking about it because they don't talk about anything. But when you go in and work with them directly, they get it and they're driving in these directions. So it's becoming a critical issue, business issue that needs to be raised to that level. Because once we start sorting things at that level, then we're going to be able to start talking about the rest. I mean, we see this all the time, that when you start to work at that level, everything that falls out of that says, okay, how do we want our people to work? Let's put a straw man together. Let's use some of these open source tools that kind of have these open source styles of working to see how this would work. And then let's turn around and take our current organization and do the delta. Say, what do we have to do pragmatically starting tomorrow to start to make ourselves look and feel more like that with that style of working? And how are we going to measure that? And really, we're going to care about cycle time. We're going to care about scrap rate. We're going to care about lead times and mean time to repair, mean time to detect. New ways of looking at how we're working. So again, I was kind of rambling there at the end. But if you go back to this is a business problem that has to be sorted out as a business problem, the technology solutions will just fall out of it. It'll basically become straightforward engineering, and we'll know what we're doing. If we try to attack this from the middle as a technology problem, we're just going to recreate our old problems, and we're just going to fail. So that was my super short answer.
I do want to address one point that you made, which in a positive way. I like the way you applied using the newer tool sets, the open source tool sets, as a way to get a feel for what you want to do for the model, with the expectation that this may not be the end game that we implement. It gives us a feeling for how we want to act, and then we can go look at and see what we have around the company that we're already using to implement it in a production-like environment. So that I haven't really seen anybody pose it that way, and I think that's a great use for some of these newer tool environments.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're very pragmatic, and that's kind of our approach to moving big organizations. Is you have to, it's not about giving them the tool or telling them what to do. You can't tell people what to do. You have to show them a way of seeing the problem. You have to show them a positive way of this is the way we want the future to look. To show them what it feels like, what this should feel like, right? Like show them how it could be, how great it could be, and get them to see what that looks like.
They see it.
What's that?
Customer doesn't know what they want until we show them.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's really about. I mean, you hear it from the lean guys. It's about installing lean thinking. They don't say do it. This is the lean way. They say when you see your problems in a lean way and you see solutions in a lean way, then you're always going to be prepared because people, tools, technology, business conditions, everything changes always. So you're never going to have a complex organization. It's like you said your military example before, right? You want it. The point of basic training is not to tell you what to do. The point of basic training is to get everybody seeing things in the same way. So when you throw some curveball at them, you know that your 5,000 troops are going to react in a predictable and mission correct way, right? So yes. I don't know why.
Andy, I want to give you a chance to, Mr. Mann, I want to give you a chance to bring us home. What do companies really need to be thinking about in terms of DevOps? What's most important?
Look, I think actually something that Damon just brought up, I think is absolutely critical. It's about being realistic, being pragmatic, especially for larger organizations. There are things that you can do, and honestly, there are going to be things that are just not going to work. And sometimes I get a lot of stick online for being pragmatic and shooting down ideas. There's a place for idealism. There's a place for dogma. It's not in a large enterprise. You need to figure out what's causing the roadblocks, what's slowing you down, what's causing quality problems, where are the structural issues that are creating these impenetrable silos, and solve the problem. A lot of the big organizations I work with who are doing DevOps don't think they're doing DevOps. They think they're solving application quality issues. They think they're solving time to market issues. They're getting operators and developers to work better together, but they sort of eschew this idea of we're doing DevOps because they're taking this pragmatic, no dogma approach. And I think that's absolutely critical. You've got to understand what can your boss do, what can their boss do, what can you do within your department, what's in your control, what can you actually achieve within the next 6 months, 12 months. If you think you're going to get to continuous delivery, continuous integration, continuous everything in a 3-week time frame, you're going to fail. In a large business, you don't get that many opportunities to fail that badly. So find something that's going to work, and again, to Damon's point, prove that success, right? Do something that makes a difference, prove that it works, and then start to build on that success. A very pragmatic approach is absolutely critical, especially in those bigger enterprises.
Yeah. Real is better than perfect.
I had a luncheon with a CIO from a large enterprise company last week, and surprisingly, one of the most well-streamlined environments I've ever seen. I mean, doing DevOps without saying they're doing DevOps. And one of the most important things that he said was that it's a matter of understanding the problem domain, from the perspective of the business, and being able to drive projects effectively. And they've become so adept at that they've actually now they're the PMO for all projects in the business. And I have never seen that come out of an IT organization before. And it's a statement on preparation and understanding what it means to drive with a very pragmatic and very focused approach to solving the business problem, being there for the business. And I think some people get lost in that. Their job is to come in and manage the Oracle database, and they forget that part of the reason why they're there in the first place is that data is a corporate asset. And today, that corporate asset is becoming even more valuable with that business analytics and big data. And you need to see yourself as bigger than just the DBA.
So one thing just to support both what you guys said is that this is that whole idea that if you go either way on a political spectrum, you end up at totalitarianism, right? It's like you go all the way to the left, all the way to the right, you end up in the same bad place. And it comes down to inside organizations the idea that hey, we're just being pragmatic. Which is sort of a code for we're going to accept the way things are. It can be dangerous, right? There's a little bit it's good, it's bad, and then there's a dogmatic is we got to do things the new flashy, cool kid way, right? They both meet up in the same place, which is it's bad for the organization, right? Yeah. So I think if you look at it from the point of view of what are we here to do for the organization? We're here to solve time to market problems, and we're here to improve quality or reduce scrap rate, which is kind of an internal lean way of looking at quality, right? So that pragmatism is fine as long as we're always taking steps to improve those things. If we're taking steps that says, hey, I'm being pragmatic, and you see a lot of times enterprise, that's code for I'm just going to let things be. I'm going to take that thing that's bad, and I'm just going to say, oh no, really it's good because I'm being pragmatic. When the reality is it's actually hurting the thing that I'm trying to solve. It's hurting the thing that I'm actually after. So I would caution that the pragmatism can be just as abused as the ivory tower or the purist of the sort of new cloudy DevOpsy continuous delivery cool kid way of doing things versus the old-fashioned ivory tower kind of IT or architect way of doing things. Both those things are I see dramatically misused, but you can avoid all that if you just say what is the goal of the business, time to market, quality, what are all the steps we can, regardless of dogma, what are the steps we can do to go attack that goal in an incremental improvement way. Everybody's happy.
One other piece of advice that CIO had that was really relevant to DevOps, to people watching this thinking about wanting to do DevOps, is they're not afraid to fail, but they fail small. And that's been a key driver for them being able to succeed and take on some of these newer initiatives and drive to the cloud and move to SaaS very quickly and embrace new technologies. Is they're not afraid to fail, but they fail small. And I think with regard to what we're talking about here with DevOps, that is a great message. Don't be afraid to fail, but fail small.
Well, and to figure that out, to go back, when you mentioned the PMO, right, the project management office, usually that's very much associated with app development and whatnot. But they know how to manage, projects where you have little tasks in between. And if you go to them, as operations and go, look, we have all these tasks, help us show the business why we need to do something different. Where can we get the most value, or where's the least impact where we can try something so we're going to fail small, but yet get a chance to try it. So leverage the people that already know how to do this in other parts of the organization and whom the business trusts to do that kind of planning, and get them maybe to help you, make a model or make the case for, hey, let's try it with this, and here's my chart that says this is a good idea. Right. And you'll get better buy-in that way.
Lori, an interesting trick I saw a PMO office actually do to make themselves relevant in this kind of service world is they rebranded themselves as the service management office, and instead of calling themselves like product managers or PMOs or project managers, what they call themselves producers, and they literally looked at it like they're making a movie. Mm-hmm. And they call themselves they're executive producers, line producers. And they're like, hey, we're part of this thing that never ends. So it's like the producing team is assigned to this project. So imagine a movie that never ends. And all they're there to do is make sure this movie gets shot and the stars show up on time and the content's in the right place and they got the right permits and everything. So they looked at it in that way to say that there's no more notion of a project in our organization anymore because our customers don't look at it as a project, right? Our customers see a running service, and that thing has a start, and it never has an end until we turn it off. So what are we doing, calling in a project? Now, the interesting about that is they ran that into the CFO because the CFO managed all their budgets in terms of capital expense, which is a project. So now that now like, oh geez, we got to rethink how we do our resource. So it forced a lot of issues, but that was a great example of an interesting, I could call it a culture hack that I saw an enterprise PMO team do that suddenly forced the issue throughout the organization. Because otherwise you said, oh yeah, we're a service or delivery organization. Oh sure, but they ran themselves like an old-fashioned classic software delivery firm with an ops team sort of hanging off the back end for dear life. So that just came to mind when you brought up how use the resources you got, and if you get them on board, they'll come up with their own kind of smart ways to force the issue.
You talked about movies that never end, but I think it's probably time, looking at the clock. This particular movie probably has to end, but it's been a great movie. I appreciate the expertise of the four of you. Great conversation. Thank you. And I will send you a link. We can all tweet about it happily. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
You got it.